You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Global Trade This Week, brought to you by Cap Logistics, the only internet television show that doesn't just talk about what is happening, what's probably going to happen. We take out our magic 8 ball and we shake it up, and then we take a look at what we think is going to happen, and we share it with you. As always, I am joined today by my good friend Doug Draper. The mayonnaise to my ham sandwich, the meatballs to my pasta. You complete me. I'm fired up today to talk about a number of topics. We're fresh off of Thanksgiving, heading straight into the holiday season, and it looks like an inauguration. And with that, Mr. Draper, the floor is yours.
All right. I just don't know what to say, Pete, when you start dropping mayonnaise, meatballs and stuff. I just have to sit there and smile. I don't know how to reply sometimes to your comments. But bring them on. So first topic I have today is some information that came out just last week, which is pretty unique. It's related to Parcel shipping and really a reaction to the driving factor of consumer buying habits now. So basically, UPS came out with a new directive called Fastest Ground Ever, which I have to applaud them for a very creative title. But essentially what it is that UPS is upgrading their infrastructure and their network to push parcels through their system faster, right? So if you can move if a shipment stays in the network for 1 day less, obviously, you can move more parcels through the system, right? And with the e-commerce, the drive of Amazon really dictating not only how consumers are buying it, but how companies are pushing those deliveries through. I think it's pretty creative. They certainly have the money to do the upgrade, but really, it's the Amazon influence. I just took some notes on this. The Amazon influence is really driving it. You want your packages sooner. I want my packages sooner. That expectation is not going away. So I get it. They're trying to meet demand. There's also the small to medium-sized business segment that was spoken about where, that's their highest profit margin stuff. I mean, Amazon's a gigantic customer of UPS, but they have some pretty thin margins. You're going to, it's all about the volume. You'll the margins may be thin, but you'll make up for it in volume, right? But you got the small and medium-sized businesses, which pay a little bit more, and they're also demanding it. So, you got two different types of business models out there that are pushing for it. So I think it's pretty good. And then to cut to the chase a little bit, you got to keep up with the Joneses. I know that the ground delivery network with the competitor is a little bit more robust into certain markets. And so maybe I shouldn't say keeping up with the Joneses. Maybe it's more of keeping up with the Smiths in that aspect. So I get it. I think it's great. Thank you, sir. Rim shot background. So I think it's great. So here's the one thing, and that makes me a little bit nervous is I didn't see a whole lot of detail, and maybe I didn't dive deep enough. But it's great to move it from origin all the way to destination, but it still needs to get delivered. There's still an infrastructure that has to make that final mile. And I didn't see a whole lot of how they're beefing up the final delivery network. I know trucks are really challenged right now, and I heard that FedEx, just didn't have enough vans. They're really challenged with just getting the freight from the final mile to the consumer. So I know that's been a big challenge. And I kind of equate it being out in Colorado, Pete, with since ski season just started off, right? I got these high speed lifts, X number of people moving up the mountain as fast as you can, get more people on the mountains. That's my analogy. But if you can't get them off that ski lift at the end, you're just going to get buckled down, right? You're going to have chairlift after chairlift after chairlift. And if those novice skiers don't get the hell out of the way so the other guy coming behind them can get off the lift efficiently, there's going to be kind of a traffic jam. So I think there may be some challenges there. But again, UPS is a smart company. I think, I have a lot of respect for what they're doing. They'll figure it out. But I didn't see a whole lot of, hey, here's how we're going to handle that the end of the ski lift, because there's going to be problems. And that's more infrastructure. It's more drivers. So I think there's going to be some additional cost increases. They may package it and spin it however they see fit. But beyond the normal GRI in January, first of the year, I think there's going to be something coming down the road. And I think they're going to be looking at more hybrid delivery models that everybody's using out there, where you're reaching out to the general public to take some routes. Maybe not. I know the union situation comes into play, but that's the one piece of this that gives me a little bit of pause. What happens at the end of the ski lift? Because it can be a shitstorm if you don't have that final push and get those guys out of the way. So there's topic number one, Pete. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Am I on base, off base?
A little bit of both. I'm going to disagree with you about a number of things, but agree with you on a couple. So you brought up at the very end of what you were talking of. You brought me to where I have an issue with all this. When it comes to logistics, you can have it fast, you can have it cheap, and you can have it right. And you can always have two of those three things. And whenever I hear about everything's new and improved with any sort of logistics firm, I just assume that what's also going to be new is the price, and it never goes down. So if we have a publicly traded, which they are, logistics firm that's suddenly making things more efficient, I'm going to assume that it's going to cost more money. And shareholders are going to expect a return on whatever investment they're making, which usually means, like you said, make it up in volume, but only so much you can do there, or raising prices. And the second thing that I wanted to mention here is, you were talking about FedEx, and of course there's also DHL if we're getting more global, but people always tend to forget the underdog. They forget that little company that could, the U.S. Postal Service. And I think we tend to forget that unlike all of these other companies we're talking about, the U.S. Postal Service is literally the only organization in America that has a storehouse or a warehouse in every city in America. Name me another. The fact that Amazon hasn't tried to buy them yet shocks me. And, you think I'm kidding, but there's a good argument to be made that they could probably bail them out and operate them better. And I'm not in Colorado, so I'm not buying legal weed at breakfast, but it's just an idea that crossed my mind today when I was thinking about what could be done to deal with that Amazon final mile issue. Nobody complains about how their mail shows up. I mean, you want to talk about professionalism? Got a couple hundred years of doing it. I think there's going to be more investment in USPS because they're going to be price competitive, and I think they're learning from their mistakes faster than any other provider.
I don't know. I get it. You bring in the underdog. They've had how many opportunities, Pete? All right, let's go.
Yeah.
You got the best laid plans, so you get punched in the face, right? That's what Tyson said.
That's right.
I don't know. It seems to me that with this e-commerce isn't new. I mean, it's skyrocketed recently, but they've had a hell of a lot of chances to take advantage of the situation. And for one reason or another, leadership, money, infrastructure, whatever it is, they haven't taken advantage of the e-commerce ability to grow. In my opinion, it's been there for years, decades, and they haven't figured it out. I will
respectfully you know what e-commerce is, dude? And I hate to make this so simple. We all love that buzzword. I'm a consultant. I believe you still are too, right?
For the most part.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
I get paid by the hour to solve people's problems. And I also get paid for how many consultant words I can use in a conversation. Like e-commerce is definitely one of them. Synergy, traction, right? E-commerce is nothing more than catalogs on a computer. And we all love to talk about how the whole world has changed because of e-commerce. Bullshit. The only thing that's changed is how people gain access to what they want to buy. Because I used to buy stuff from the Ella Bean catalog. And when I grew up in the middle of nowhere, at Christmas time, I got the Montgomery Ward catalog and I'd circle what I wanted and Santa Claus would magically make it show up at my house. All e-commerce is a catalog on the internet. The big difference being these companies are raising our expectations. Things showed up when they showed up in the mail back in the good old days. Things showed up when they showed up in UPS and FedEx when they said they were in the good old days. Now, you and I have become so bratty and so spoiled about when things are going to show up. We want something like our, like the air filter for my air purifier. I want it delivered as fast as a pizza. So what's really happening here is these logistics firms are learning to deal with our expectations of consumers, particularly in a country and an economy that wants everything right now, and they bitch and complain on Yelp when it doesn't happen. So I get it where you're coming from. You know who did catalog purchasing better than anybody else? The USPS. And when the regulations get out of their way, I think you're going to see a better product. Now I'll be far dead before that happens. I'll be very, very dead, Doug. But I guess we'll let time tell.
Yeah. Well, I hope you don't die anytime soon because we got a second topic, and this one's in your court, my friend. So what do you got for us today?
Man, that buttery smooth transition right there.
I'm working on it.
Boy wonder producer Keenan back in his control room eating golden grams, surfing Target for what Star Wars toys he wants right now. You think he ever gets mad that we constantly call him a child?
Well, first of all, it's not we, it's you. And I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's good. I like it. He's a tough guy.
The great thing about being old and established is I don't have to care what he thinks. So I'm sure he's back in the control room right now, eating golden grams, maybe watching some Disney Plus, probably catching up on The Mandalorian while we talk here. But I feel bad for him because that's the kind of transition he gets so excited about. And then I just stepped all over it and I don't care. So this is the first topic for me this week. Yeah, I've been talking a lot about this, Doug. This whole idea that customs has been dormant. In every great, medieval movie or science fiction movie, there is an evil force that is asleep that suddenly awakens. Whether it's Smaug the dragon or Snape in the Star Wars flicks, there's always something that reawakens and ruins everything. Most of us, as people in trade and logistics, have enjoyed a relatively quiet 2020 because customs has not been able to travel and throw a wrench into our lives. And I have a feeling that 2021 is going to be the year at some point when customs is going to get back on their horse, 6 guns ablazing to fix all the problems that we do as people involved in trade. And I applaud this mostly because when they're auditing people, it means hourly fees and projects for me, which have been really hard to come by because customs has not been as aggressive as they normally have. Now, I know you think I'm crazy, so I would like to get your opinion about what you think could happen with regards to that.
Yeah. I think Revenge of the Sith will happen in 2022. I think you're spot on. Simply because COVID's not going away in January. It's probably still with us for many, many, many months. And I think that everybody is treading lightly. Nobody wants to take a whole lot of risks. And I think the first and foremost agenda of the entire world is let's get this thing under control. That's not happening first quarter, maybe middle of the year. And then they can start looking at priorities. So I agree with you. I just think it's not happening until the very end of this year, or potentially even 2022. That's my take. I
agree with you, very end of this year, because I have a piece of information you probably don't have, which is customs usually informs people they're going to give them a full-blown focused assessment around October. And the reason for that is they get their fiscal year budget and they do there. So you're probably right that if there was going to be a particularly bad part of the year for importers, it probably won't happen until October when we have an idea of where we are with the vaccine and the COVID and the blah, blah, blah. And then at the same time, when they have an idea of how much money the Treasury is going to give them to actually go out and do some auditing. So I think you're right there. Later 2020, and if not then, beginning of 2021, I think people are going to get a rude awakening.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my first topic. Now, very excited to talk about your second one. And the floor is yours, Mr. Draper.
Yeah. All right. Second one's more transportation related again. That's the beauty of the yin and the yang with our show, right? A lot of global trade, a lot of transportation. So I'm going to kind of take you back to school, Pete. That's what I do.
Great.
I'm going to talk to you about the phases of the innovation theory, right? And this will relate to my topic of the electrification. Let me start over that. The electrification of commercial vehicles. I can only say it once, so we're just that's it. But the phases of innovation, right? You have the innovators, you have the early adapters, you have the folks. What do I got down here? The early majority, then the late majority, and then the laggers that don't really do anything. So my whole point in that is that the whole concept of electric cars, electric trucks, I think in the last couple of years has been the innovator status, right? There's a lot of bells and whistles and cool companies that have come up. You got Nikola and Tesla and all these type of things. So I think what you're going to see, so my whole take in 2021 is you're going to see a lot of movement away from the innovators to the early adapters. So there's going to be a lot of companies that say it's time for us to jump into this, and it's time for us to look at electric vehicles. That being said, you're not going to see electric vehicle driving from Maine down to Virginia or Colorado out to Kansas. It's going to be local stuff. A lot of drayage. I think a lot of the ports are going to take advantage of that. So local, front. I was going to say front range, which is Colorado, but 100 miles or less. Let's get these guys back to the barn if the shit goes down in case something's wrong. So I think we're going to see some traction. I think we're going to see some big money put into it, and we're going to see some actual stuff on the road, not just a lot of talk. And what goes with that is a lot of marketing. So I think you're going to hear about it a lot because, Pete, if you and I own a drayage company and we buy an electric truck, it may be 1% of our fleet. But we're going to hype it up, man. We're going to talk about it. We're going to show you how awesome it is. We're going to have all kinds of statistics around the benefit of it, which is valid. I love it. It's going to draw more attention. But my take on this is that 2021, it's going to be the early adapters. We're going to see a lot more tangible results from electrification, the electric cars there, Pete, electric trucks.
So I love this topic and I hate it all at the same time because I'm a stone cold hippie, as you know, and I love the idea of us using as much electric power to move stuff around as we can. I hate the idea of us continuing down the road of fossil fuels if there is a smarter, innovative way to do it that also puts America in a position to lead the world in production, distribution, and sales of that product. And I really do believe that most countries are either going to steal innovation from us or be lagging behind us. And I don't know about you, man, but I would get RFPs when I was at the old forwarding companies I worked at from certain companies. And it should come as no surprise, a lot of them were in Colorado, where there would be a section of the RFP that said, what is your company doing to deal with their footprint, their carbon footprint? What is your company doing to ensure they use recyclable materials whenever possible? There was really a social aspect to the RFP. And I think you're 1,000% right that you can answer that question by saying we are transitioning a percentage of our fleet to all electric, or we're positioning a portion of our fleet to alternative fuels. My problem with this is that it needs to be subsidized or encouraged in a way that I don't feel like it's happening. There's always something in front of the Senate. There's always something in front of state legislatures that's saying, if you buy a Tesla, your taxes are going to be here and here. If you decide to buy whatever electric cars in the market, we got to stop saying Tesla, Doug, you're 1,000% right. There's so many other companies that are doing it. We have to start giving everybody credit for being involved in this. Why isn't there legislation to try to deal with one of the biggest consumers of energy in our country, which is these trucks, to say we're going to find ways where if you embrace innovation, we'll do more of these? Because what I'm afraid of is what you and I are talking about right here just becomes like a conversation piece. It becomes a bullet point in an RFP rather than companies really trying to make the transition. Do you really think that the company that has 10, 15, 20 trucks is going to make that very expensive transition? Or is it going to be the UPS's, FedEx's, DHL's of the world and CH Robinson's and those guys that make that?
Yeah, you got to chase the money, right? It's not cheap to do that. I don't know. It just depends on how successful a smaller fleet, private fleet would be. If you and I have a couple of trucks and we're a 15 truck kind of fleet, probably not. But I think that there's a middle ground there where you could, if you got a 50, 60 truck fleet, it'd be worthwhile as long as you stay local. But it's going to chase the big money. But it's only going to be such a small percentage of the fleet, but they're going to hype it beyond belief. And it's going to get a lot of press. And so the first one to market to talk about it, that they're actually doing it and put rubber on the road, is going to be the winner in that narrative.
Can I give you one more thing to consider? And I don't think we've spoken enough about technology's play with unions and labor. So when you look at every time there's an argument with the Longshoremen's Association, it always spouts from the idea that ports want to involve more more innovation into what they're doing because it reduces manpower. And one of the things I worry about is how are the Teamsters going to react? How is maybe we shouldn't talk about Teamsters. We'll both end up in a lot of trouble business wise. But I'm not saying that one way or the other this should be done. But should labor unions that move a lot of business over trucks be worried about the idea of an autonomous vehicle taking the place of a member of their union? And I think by saying to some of these large carrier companies, we're going to put some of this onto our fleet. If I were with the Teamsters or another union, I'd say, well, hold on a second, because what you're essentially doing is setting us up to be in a conversation down the road where now it's 25% of your fleet, and maybe autonomous stuff is at a point where they don't need us anymore, and you're going to take our jobs away. Do you think they're even thinking about that?
Maybe at the higher levels. I mean, it's a great question, Pete. I don't have an answer for it, but I think it's very valid. I, not thought of that. I mean, part of this show is that we, people may not know it's relatively unscripted, and you and I just go back and forth and have some good dialogue. So I haven't really thought of that, but it's valid. And I think that the leadership in union organizations are probably looking to angle that or pitch it to their advantage. But that's kind of how I would answer that question.
I'm gonna say the best thing about our new show, better than BBC, Fox News, CNN, you name it, is, Doug, sometimes we say we don't know. I think that's a good thing. It's okay for us to not have an answer, man. I think that's all right.
Yeah, that's true. But here, I like your answer, and I'm anxious to hear about your topic number 4, because you're going to talk about how tariffs are going to save the global planet, right? So
tariffs could save the world.
Rip it, man. I truly have no idea what you're going to talk about. So our audience will see a true banter back and forth.
I think for Christmas, we should do one drunk just to see what happens. Like, let's really take it to the limit. So the Biden administration is becoming a reality as far as people being put into place for major spots on the team. And there was an announcement this week that we have a new head of DHS who comes from a very long career of immigration issues and a very long career of cyber issues, but immigration being a bigger part of why he's famous. And he's going to, I personally believe, so me, Pete Mento, my own opinion, I believe that he's going to be an excellent Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. What it didn't help me to understand is how it's going to engage with customs, how it's going to engage with, the other areas of the Department of Homeland Security. It's really focused on immigration. When we begin to look at the other parts of how Biden is putting together his cabinet, it's becoming more and more clear that there is going to be some trying to make the far left happy by being really super engaged in issues that matter to them. And one of those issues that really matters to the people that got Mr. Biden elected is climate change. So how do we use trade to manage climate change? There have been a lot of people way smarter than me who have been commenting in the press recently that there are whispers out of the Biden camp that instead of saying that we're going to be in a trade war over intellectual property rights, or we're going to be in a trade war, what we're going to do instead is correct the course of certain issues like child labor, forced labor, intellectual property theft, of course, but then climate change by weaponizing tariffs. So the idea would be, instead of hitting China with a 25% tariff because they've been stealing our ideas, we hit China with a 25% tariff, or some other country, because they're not taking the necessary steps to embrace climate change and cessation of it. And the first time I heard this, I will admit to everybody listening that I laughed. I was like, come on. When I was this is ridiculous. And then I started reading the justification for it. And it's like anything else. If you give a politician enough air, they will find a way to justify anything. And this would be a really interesting way to say to countries that I think aren't China, frankly, that you're going to have to learn to manage your carbon footprint, or we're going to help you to manage it by making your stuff more expensive and your production slow down. So don't be shocked if you see that coming up. And you and I we try to stay away from DC and politics, but you kind of got to get into it with this one. I really believe that sort of creative attitude towards climate change through tariffs isn't just possible. I think it's likely to happen. I think you'll see it in the first term.
First term is 4 years. So first term, like 2021 or?
Yeah. I think that there's going to be a reset of American trade policy. And part of that reset is going to be making decisions about how we're going to interact with our friends and neighbors around the world in a positive way. I think India is going to benefit. I certainly think Brazil is going to benefit. I think that Bangladesh, as an example, I think Europe, the UK, but I think there are other parts of the world where that reset's going to be painful. And I think that's where Mr. Biden is going to bring it. It's going to happen early. So I would not be surprised if it was 2021, beginning of 2022.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you on the sense that it's, I don't want to use the word apology tour, right? But there's been bridges burned, partners that we've isolated. Years, oh, yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of it's going to be extending the olive branch, especially to Europe, maybe some accords and climate changes specifically that we're going to get right back into it. And then I think strength is in numbers, right? So or is the U.S. going to do it alone on their own tariffs? I think it's going to be more of a collaborative effort.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think another thing, Doug, we have to keep in mind is, we just had Thanksgiving, and I don't know around your Thanksgiving table, but I have a pretty politically diverse group of friends and family. And I'll tell you one thing we didn't talk about was tariffs. It never even came up. But people talk all the time about climate change. They talk all the time. I mean, we don't. So I've got a feeling that this is a great way to get away with appeasing people from a policy perspective because no one talks about it like it matters. And I think you're going to see more happening because people just don't care. The average American doesn't realize what they're paying in tariffs right now as an addition to their business, their lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think that cohesion, get the band back together, and let's do this as a world through tariffs. But Pete, I didn't really understand how you were going to tie that together, and now I do. So I think that's a pretty good one. For now, I don't really have it. What's that?
I'm such a nerd. I'm so sorry, everybody. It's sad. It's sad. I'm so lucky I found a girlfriend because, if it weren't for her attitude towards dating a nerd, it would be a very lonely life. I'd probably have 7 cats, watch a lot of Battlestar Galactica reruns. It'd be an ugly shame, Doug. You don't understand what it's like out there for a single man of my age and powerful build in 2020. You don't even know, man.
Well, I tell you what, let's continue the dialogue on next week's show. The awesomeness about this is it's global trade this week. So we've covered this week and we'll be able to hit it again. So I'd like to remind everybody that global trade this week's supported and put on by Cap Logistics. As Pete says, they got some great millennials back there pushing the buttons and flipping the levers, which makes all this happen. So we thank them. And like I said, next week we'll get into it. We'll get the crystal ball out again, Pete. And we'll see what the hell's coming down the pike. And the thing I love about this show, Pete, is it's not only is it impromptu, we kind of make sense, but it's forward thinking all the time. We're talking about what's going to be happening, not reacting to what already is. That's easy. Pontificating on what's coming down the pike is the hard stuff. So anyway,
Agreed.
Pete, as always, it's great to hang out with you today. I appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next week on Global Trade this week. Take care.
Take care, Doug.